The Single Tracks podcast is brought to you by TPC, the Pros Closet. Spring is the perfect time to upgrade, and TPC has an industry-leading selection of new and certified pre-owned bikes, plus frames, wheels, and accessories. Each certified pre-owned bike is inspected, tested, and serviced, and every bike includes 30-day returns. Visit tpc.bike/singletracks and enter code SingleTracks40 to save $40 on every order over $200. That's the Pros Closet at tpc.bike/singletracks, and look for the link and coupon code in the show notes. Hey everybody, welcome to the Single Tracks podcast. My name is Jeff, and today my guest is Matt Shriver. Matt is the general manager and technical director for the Trek Factory Racing cross-country team and is based in Durango, Colorado. He's a former pro rider himself and previously served as the technical director for the Trek WorldTour road team for 7 years. Thanks for joining us, Matt. Yeah. So tell us how you made the transition from professional racing to managing race teams.
It's a good question. There's definitely not a roadmap for that and these kind of roles. But really the things that were important to a job like this are, some technical background. So, growing up in bike shops, working on bikes, just a real knowledge of the equipment that we use to race. And then knowledge of racing, of course.
Yeah.
The riders definitely use the equipment different than most customers. So, just knowing how racers use that kind of equipment. And being a bike racer, that really helps you, right? You get that experience using the product day to day, the way a normal customer doesn't. So you get pretty particular with what you want.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously education.
Yeah.
I did go to school here in Durango at Fort Lewis College, and I have a degree in exercise science. So that helped the transition from racing. I was doing my education, obviously, while I was still racing, but, having that for the plan B when the racing didn't pan out, had a good education and also a good network of people through racing and school. And that really just kind of led me to the opportunities at Trek. So when I was done racing, I still kept dabbling in a little bit of racing, but I wasn't racing full-time professional. And that kind of opened different doors. When you're racing professionally, you have to use what you're provided and what your partners are and of the team. And when you're done racing, you kind of have different opportunities. So this was where I could start to make some relationships with some companies and do some testing. And that's really how I started with Trek. I was actually not working for Trek, but doing some mountain bike racing and just testing some bikes for Trek that they were, just wanted feedback on. So that's kind of opened the door there to Trek.
Yeah, interesting. As a racer, did you feel like that, like your team managers and liaisons did a good job, or were there things where you're like, wonder why they do that, or like if I'm ever the manager, I'm gonna do it different?
Everybody does it different for sure. I would say there were definitely people in the team liaison roles, manager roles before me, and they didn't do it wrong. I did it my way. I do things my way. They did it their way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Well, I would say the wrong way is to do nothing. So, but it's the hardest part about it, being a liaison and managing teams or, the working with the athletes and the partners is just keeping everybody happy. And so that's, figuring that out. How to do that successfully. Yeah. That's really the biggest part of the job, making sure everybody's happy. So,
yeah, I mean, it sounds like, really your main skill is being like a people person and being someone who can manage relationships. What are kind of like the main responsibilities outside of that, being a pro team liaison or a general manager?
Yeah, you're correct. Being a team liaison is relationships and working with people. And, it's definitely easier where we are now, where we own most of our teams. And so we have a lot more say, we have a lot more control. And so that's made my role easier. Whereas when you're just a partner, it's a little bit more complicated because there's a lot more people involved in the decision making.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's just trying to keep people happy. The biggest also, the main responsibilities of the liaison are really just you're managing the relationship that the company has with a team and the team has with the company. So you're always in the middle, every decision, everything that's going on. You're responsible for making sure that the riders have, state of the art, cutting edge technology, that we're racing on the best equipment and educating them on how to use it. Right. And then also not just the athletes, but the staff. So in a way, you're kind of an insurance policy too, just because making sure that the equipment's working well, everybody's happy with it, that the mechanics know how to work on it, just so there's no problems. The last thing, the most stressful days are when you have a problem or something that happens and it's on live TV, and that's really what you want to avoid. So, but that's it in a nutshell. Liaison's also just really responsible for all the product, for benchmarking product that's out there, our competitors, what the riders need, the direction that we should go, and reporting that back to either our partner or, in my case, Trek HQ. We've got riders come with a specific ask for a specific event, and because we've got a goal, and how do we get there? And so it's really how new product gets developed. So,
interesting. Well, so as the general manager of the Trek Factory Racing cross country team, do you have like a staff of folks who help with? I mean, I imagine there's so much. There's like logistics and there's travel and all that stuff. Like, how big is the team that manages the team? Yeah,
that's a great question too. It is complicated because we are a global race team, and so we're racing all over, and we're often racing a couple different programs. So, last weekend, for example, we were racing in Puerto Rico. At the same time, we're racing with another squad in Spain. And so, there's a lot of logistics. We actually have a service course, which is right next door to our Trek Segafredo road team service course there in Belgium. And that's a building that is our race team hub. It has all of our team equipment in it, all of our spare parts, clothing, nutrition products, everything is in that hub, all of our vehicles. And so that's the home base. And we have an operations manager there. He keeps the lights on, keeps the vehicles working, shipping, receiving, pays everybody. And then we also have three mechanics that travel with the team to every race full time, and same with the soigneurs. And we have 2 soigneurs, and the soigneur role it varies. It can be from a massage therapist up to a osteopath or so. And then we also have a performance director, performance manager. That's actually a new role that we decided to add this year. It was something that we were missing. So we added a performance manager to the team. And then we also have a sports psychologist that works with the road team, but also works now with the mountain bike team. And and then we have our in-house Trek race shop marketing brand manager, Ryan Bodge. So he oversees all the socials and makes sure the partners get everything that they need. So, and that's to support 7 athletes. So it's about a 2-to-1 ratio of people to athletes in the mountain bike team.
Wow. Interesting. Well, so I mean, you mentioned that there are these like shared resources in terms of like sports psychologists and athletic trainers, I guess, for lack of a better term. Do some of the athletes bring their own training teams? Like, do they have coaches that they work with that they bring on board, or do they tend to use the coaches that the team provides?
It's a little bit of both. Actually, this is my second season managing the mountain bike team. So my background has been working with the road team, where we had this huge network of support people to help the riders. And at the end of the day, we want the riders to just have to worry about training, having what they need, just recovery, racing training. And so anything we can do to help them achieve their goals and take some stress off, that was something, that's what we need to do. Right. So in the last year, we looked at, where we want to be in a few years from now, kind of how my experiences with the road team and with the race shop, we decided to try to utilize some of the road team staff where we could and implement it in the mountain bike. So it's right now a little bit of a hybrid, and we definitely allow riders to use their own coaches, use their own, psychologist, sports psychologist, but at the same time, we try to give them a lot of the tools that if they want to use our people, they can. And what we see is because those people are at the races, you get a stronger connection with the athlete. And so over time, it can be just more beneficial for them to work with our coach, our performance manager or our psychologist, because they're more frequently there. And in this world, it's a relationship. You need to know the people, especially sports psychologists. That's a relationship.
Yeah.
Coaches are a relationship. So if it works well for them, great. We're there to support them. They have those tools. It's something that we've worked really hard on in the last year to help, to give them every opportunity to succeed.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And I imagine it does depend on the athlete. Some are going to have certain coaches that they prefer to work with, or maybe they have like a different style of coaching that maybe, the team coaches might not be familiar with or whatever. So yeah, that makes sense that it's kind of a mix of both.
Yeah. The main point there is what's different now is we have a race program that we run and operate. So we determine the calendar, and we show, these are the objectives of Trek. These are the objectives of the team. This is what we want to do this year. Here's how we get there, And so we provide that direction to the riders, and the performance manager, even though he may not be coaching the athlete, he's in direct contact with their coaches. So it's really to give them the feedback that, because their coach can't be at every single race, but we have our performance manager there. He's able to analyze the race, take a look at the data, even if they want that, share thoughts, and it's really efficient. You get on top of problems when they're happening, and it's just communication, just good communication.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, it does sound like Trek Factory Racing is set up as a team. I mean, you have these like structures in place and things. But then other pro teams seem to be organized under more of like a collective where, individual athletes, have their own support staff and things like that. Is there an advantage to doing it one way or another, or like what's kind of the philosophy behind those two different models?
Yeah, I know there is an advantage to building a team. We've made it pretty far in the past of just being there for logistics and support. But it's kind of back to what I was saying with the structure that we're building. It's really to make everything in-house, and it's more beneficial for the team, for Trek, to be involved in their training and their programs. And, it's just being on top of things, being in the loop, good communication. I've found that when we're not organized as a team and we're maybe just there with a couple mechanics in a soignier, and we're not, planning out the year in the season as a team, and you have a lot of different programs and different problems, and it's really confusing that way. So yeah, being all on the same page with the same objectives, we're going to be more successful that way. So that's why we have it set up as a great team, and we try to make sure that we have, we're serious about our goals, but we also want to have some fun together, have a great positive environment, and have the right people in the team. So, because you're on the road together 150 days a year, and it's important to be functioning as a unit when you're all together that long. So,
yeah, I imagine too that, not a lot of brands or groups can afford to set up a team like this, right? Like, maybe is it like a cost thing for brands too? Is it going to be less expensive if you're running it as more of like a collective of athletes versus, being able to provide like all these resources like Trek is able to do?
Yeah, it's definitely, I would say you have to invest a bit up front, but once things get going, it's a good investment, right? But yeah, I would say not every team has all the resources. Yeah. And even we struggle with it too, which is why we have to kind of piggyback here a little bit and take from the road team or ask from the road team for some help with, from the sports psychologist, or, even at our camps, we try to attend camps with the road team because that helps our cost and infrastructure, but we do benefit from that for sure.
Yeah. That does make sense. You can kind of spread the cost out. Yeah. A sports psychologist is a really nice thing to have that an individual maybe couldn't afford or wouldn't think to like hire someone to do that. But if you have one for the team and they can, work with multiple athletes, it makes sense.
Yeah. But I think you can also set up a team atmosphere just by having the right people and good communication. It doesn't have to, maybe you don't have every tool, but if you have, people that work really well together, communicate well, get along well, and have, you can have a lot of success that way too. So it's really about having the right people in the right place.
Well, for those who are familiar with road cycling, it is very much a team sport, especially in a lot of the different race formats. Riders are able to work together as a team. In mountain biking, it's less obvious like how that works. And listening to you talk, it seems like when you're saying team, you're really talking about the athletes plus the support folks. Or are you talking about the athletes? Like, are the athletes able to work together as a team and support each other in mountain bike racing?
Yeah, I guess you could separate it into the two categories. Like you said, like when I talk about the team, I talk about the staff and the riders, and we are all one team, and we all need to be working together for our goals. But there is the racing for sure. And, it's a little bit different for sure than road, but there are some points in the races where they can be working together as teammates. And I would say it does depend on the individual, but sometimes they do work together as teammates. And with the addition of short track and short track becoming more popular, that has it's actually opened the door for some more tactics.
I see. And
the teams are pretty small still. And so that definitely has a impact on team tactics, because most teams have, 2, maybe 3 riders at the most on the same team in one race. So there's not a ton that you can do as far as tactics go to really, work for one rider on a certain day. But yeah, there's definitely opportunities for the riders to work together. And I would just say it's as simple as just not following or not closing the gap when one of your teammates goes, and maybe just following the wheel when someone tries to go up, but not being the one to close the gap. So, but you see it's happening more and more. And I think that adds a little bit of excitement, like especially in the short track when it's a little bit more tactical, but yeah, it's definitely not quite, just because of the short duration of the race and the courses. You're on a single track a lot, so there's not a ton of tactics that can happen as far as actual teamwork in the race goes. Yeah,
interesting. Well, I guess the opposite of that too is like, you don't want your teammates to be actively working against one another, right? So like maybe that's the level that we're at. Like they're not necessarily able to help each other a whole lot during a race, but at the very least being on the same team gives them an opportunity to like, yeah, maybe not hurt the other person.
Exactly. And you know, they're fierce competitors. They have the same goals. We're on the same team. We come back to the same house, same hotel at the end of the race. But, and so on the course, you know, they're going for the same podium spot and, but they are really supportive of each other too. So, and, I think that's a little bit of the difference in mountain and road where, yeah, in the road, we're all in for this rider today. We're all in for this rider. And a rider will maybe give up their race in the first 100K of a road race. And then they let their leader take that over, where here we're all in to try to get as many on the podium as we can. How we get there and who it is, you know, on the day, it's just kind of up to the riders to sort it out there. You know, so at the end of the day, if they can be happy with how they performed and support each other, and maybe one day it's Yolanda winning, maybe it's Gwendolyn the next day or Vlad, but we're all psyched for each other. They can help carry the whole momentum of the team. You know, that's better for everybody. So that's really what we hope happens.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned how competitive all these athletes are. But at the same time, I've heard stories about, like, particularly on the women's side, you know, just how the women really like support each other and work together, even across teams, like, you know, doing practice laps and kind of, you know, everybody's sessioning and talking about the same like technical feature and like, how do you think we should ride it and that kind of thing. Do you see that more like on the women's team than the men's team, where it's like teamwork is a little more natural for them, or is it kind of the same for both sides?
No, I think I see it. I just think I see it. I see that just more in mountain biking. It's a smaller mountain biking in general. You know, it's a professional sport. It's a competitive sport, fierce competitors, but everybody respects each other, you know, and it's, again, we see each other at the races, whether we're on the same team or not, and everybody gets along, and it's, just more of a family vibe in the sport, I think, than road a bit. Just friendly. I think mountain biking is very approachable in that way. It's just it's an approachable atmosphere, approachable sport. On race day, it's a little different. They're still like, but pre-ride, they'll chat about lines together, even if it's their competitor the next day. You know, at the end of the day, it's just riding bikes, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting to know that there is a difference between road and mountain. So obviously once the race season is like in full gear, it's a lot of racing. It's a lot of different places, you know, month to month or even week to week. Is there a lot of downtime for staff and athlete in between events?
Well, it kind of depends on the calendar. We definitely will have some downtime, but at the same time, we're changing things a bit in our approach to races. And again, back to the team thing, where we're trying to help prepare our riders more for these World Cups. So we do, now we're doing more frequent training camps as a team, providing them the option to do these training camps. And then also they'll do their own training camps even. So downtime in between the races, we're not racing, but we're training, you know, and we're working on equipment. We're working on getting ready for the next big objectives.
That's interesting. So you are training during the season. I mean, I guess I didn't know if most of the training happens during the off season, and you just kind of focus on recovery. But it sounds like there is enough time to get in training in between races. Is that the case? You
have to actually. Racing is not the best training. So when you're racing every weekend, you actually are losing fitness. It's a different kind of fitness. You know, you're losing your endurance basically. And so at some point you need to pick some races that are maybe not the A priority, and you're either going to train through it, or you have a block after a important period and you do another build phase. And so that's the training camps that are really important for the next goals in the season. So yeah, downtime, there's a little bit, but it's pretty full gas always. We're definitely always focused and working on the goals. This year we had, our season ended in September, and we were all back together at the end of November, early December, doing our first camp. And it wasn't a training camp; it was a fun camp. It was, let's go have some fun together and get to know some new staff and the new riders. And so we just, try to create that good connection with everybody. And so we had a fun training camp in Arizona where we did a cruise around the Southwest in some RVs and really got to know each other, and did some sweet mountain bike rides. Yeah.
Is that fun? I was going to ask, like you said, is focused on fun. Does that mean bikes, or does that mean anything but bikes?
Bikes always have to be involved. It was, we were juggling what was the best to do for the team and team building. But of course we have athletes, and a lot of the staff are also athletes and passionate about riding. And so it turned out that riding needed to be a part of it, of course. So, but that was hey, we had a good season. We have a new season coming up. Let's not be apart for so long, keep the connection. But then we start doing the hard work already after the holidays in January, and then racing starts in February. So we're already into our season.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us, we're familiar with that idea of training camps, and we'll see like videos or, media that's produced from that. But it does just seem to be like the preseason training or, the off season stuff. But yeah, it's good to know that this is ongoing. This happens during, the race season, and pretty much whenever there's an opportunity, it sounds like.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Cause it is a long season, and what you do in November, December isn't going to carry you all the way to October. So you got to hit the reset in there, do some more builds, specific training to maintain that fitness throughout the year.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned, how a race team is a team, and people need to be able to work together, and it's a lot of it is about these relationships. So I'm curious to know how team athletes are selected. Is this generally a business decision, or do you also take into account things like how people are going to work together and sort of their personality and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's really important that they fit, right? It's not all about results. Results are great. For sure, we would like to be on the podium. But if they're not good people, then yeah, we don't really want them in the team.
Yeah.
And so that's from athletes to staff. It's got to be the right fit. And so we try to select people that we feel like align with our principles, our brand principles, and but also our partners, and that we feel like are going to be good representatives for Trek, but also for bike racing, and for the sport. Of course, like I said, winning's great, but you also need to be winning off the bike. So
right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, does it ever come down to that, where there's an argument where someone's like, hey, we really need this person because they fill this, gap that we have, we really want to do well in this event this year or whatever, versus other people are saying, hold on, like, I don't know if, this person's a good fit for the team.
Yeah. I mean, people definitely have to fit the long-term, because whether it's staff or riders, people come and go, and in the end, we want to have the team and the brand and the team go on for forever. So, it's like it's got to be right. It's got to be the right fit.
Yeah. That makes sense too, that it is a continuum, right? Like you're representing Trek. And so there are going to be certain athletes that fit that sort of brand. Whereas other athletes, you'd bring them on and it would totally change kind of the character of the team. And that's obviously not within your goals for what you're trying to do.
Yeah. It's important to have a diverse team too. You know, we'd like to have people from different countries. You know, in the mountain bike teams, it's smaller, but you know, in the road team, we have all different nationalities. And that actually it just helps the vibe in the team too. You know, you don't have one nation that's dominating the conversation at the dinner table, you know, or it creates a better environment, different things, you know. It doesn't get stale when it's different cultures and different people from all over.
Yeah. I imagine you learn a lot from each other. And one of the questions I have is it difficult? Like, is language barrier a difficulty? Because like you said, a lot of these athletes, even on the mountain bike team, a number of them are from different European countries, you know, as American athletes. Like, does everybody just speak English? Is that like the default? And then, but I imagine that would be hard for some athletes, like if they're not super fluent.
Yeah. English is the official language of the team.
Okay.
Everybody has to have a basic level of English, whether it's the riders or the staff. And, you know, that's important for just communication, you know,
right.
Like just the understanding the team handbook or emails or whatever. But, but also for me in my role, just important really for like equipment, you know, feedback, stuff like that to the company are really important protocols, but it's a challenge sometimes, you know. I would say we definitely don't overlook people unless if they can't speak any English, it's not going to work, you know?
Right. Yeah. That would be tough.
But we also have helped staff improve their English. And so, like in our road team, for example, we provide courses to them that Trek pays for so that they can improve their English. So it's not only helping them with the team, but it's helping them outside of the team as well. So, but yeah, communication's key, you know, so we got to be able to communicate, but we get along fine and we make it work, and everybody in our team speaks good enough English that there's never issues.
Yeah. Good to know. So I imagine there's a lot of stressful parts about being a team manager. What are some of the like most stressful moments, or are there times like things that happen that still stand out that you're like, oh my gosh, that still gives me sweats because it was so stressful?
Yeah, I think actually one of the hardest, just looking back at the last 2 years, has been managing COVID and that in the team. And just there's a lot of different opinions, and then you're in different countries where the regulations are different. And so, you know, one day it's fine to do this because this country says that, or this doctor says that. But so that was, for me personally, that was a big challenge for me in the last years, with just keeping people healthy, making sure that we're doing the right thing for the public's health as well, even though we want to race and we're there to race, but doing the right thing and looking at the big picture in the long term. That was definitely one of the hardest things to manage. And then just making sure everybody has the hardest things to do, or in my role, or just making sure everybody has the feeling that they can talk to you, that they have the support that they need, and that everybody's getting along. You know, that's the hardest thing, being a manager. So you're kind of a camp counselor in a way, sometimes, but yeah.
It sounds, I mean, you're a problem solver is the main thing, it seems like. And being just the first part of that is making it so people feel comfortable to come to you when they have a problem, so that you make sure it gets solved. For sure.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And then the other most stressful times are if we have a equipment problem that cost us a result, you know, or fortunately we have great product and good partners. That's really rare that does happen, but it happens occasionally where you miss out because something happened, and then the phone's blowing up with what's going on over there. So, and then just, sorting that out and making sure that we have that fixed before our next big event and our next goals, so that we don't have the same mistake twice, but those are always stressful days when you have an issue that costs you a result.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you mentioned that the role is really, you're the go-between between the brand and the athletes and sort of the race program. So is there a lot of pressure from the brand to win races? Is that like a big part of how the team is evaluated, or is there something else?
Our goals are to win races, but it's not the only thing. We have teams for the two main reasons, and that's marketing and product development, right? So of course, winning races is great. We want to be on the podium as often as possible, but it's not the only thing, and that's not how we measure the success. It's back to having every race is an opportunity to tell a story. And sometimes that story is a story of, awesome success where we win the race or we sweep the podium, but sometimes it's a different story. And sometimes it's about the struggle, in the race, but it is a story, and it's back to just taking those opportunities to tell stories, whether we're winning or losing, but sharing that with our fans, and sharing it with the cycling community. And so that's what it's really about, engaging with people and inspiring people, and connecting them with our partners and our riders and our brand.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you mentioned that the like kind of two-pronged approach, or two goals really, right? Marketing and then product development. And, thinking about that, it's almost like you win if you win and you win if you lose, because if you lose, then you have an opportunity to learn something about the product or whatever.
Yes, correct.
And so that's an interesting way to look at it.
We always learn something, we learn where we maybe could improve for that race the next year. When we finish the races, we always have a race report that we do. So it's mechanics do a race report, and then I do a report just on our performance, how we did. And we try to learn right away, like what did we do well here? What didn't go well? Where can we improve? And then, the athletes are always giving us that feedback, so that we're giving that to our partners at SRAM or Pirelli or whoever, or Trek, to make a better product for us. And so we can hit those goals. And ultimately what we're doing out there trickles down to our customers. So what the teams are using, and what the riders are pushing us for to develop ends up on, the bike in the garage for the customer at the store. So that's really important to us. Like we're always learning from the teams. It's really, it's cool too. Like the stuff we learn is pretty cool.
Well, so are you able to then, like, what happens to those reports? Do people kind of read them right away, like, during the week, or can you go back and see like stuff from the 90s and learn from like the managers from back then and the athletes from back then? Like what's ultimately happens to that information?
I hope we don't go back to the 90s, but
there's got to be something that was learned and it's kind of just passed down like word of mouth.
Yeah, I would say in a way we're going back to the 90s with gravel and some of those trends that are happening with
up the playbook for that.
Where we're starting to see some of that from in the gravel, where what we did then is kind of what we're doing now, and it's working. With new materials and stuff. But the reports. Those do sit in a folder. They go straight to our product managers. So for me, on the technical side, we have weekly meetings with product managers.
Oh, wow.
And just to give that feedback. And if it's something serious, it's like the next day, so, but yeah, everything is seen and heard by either the director of mountain bike and the product managers, and sometimes even all the way up to the senior level in Trek of, what we need and what we're asking for.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things that I think is perhaps a bigger part of road racing, but definitely part of mountain biking, is anti-doping protocols. How intrusive are those for mountain biking? Is this something that you have to deal with a lot as a team manager, liaison, or is it pretty low key for the most part?
I mean, I actually feel like the athletes have to deal with it more at home than we do at the races. And it's gotten to the point now where it's generally accepted as, hey, this is a great thing. So it's not an inconvenience, which is, it's not.
Okay. Yeah.
We're always willing to do it. The riders understand it, why they have to do it. And so it's not, sure, when they show up at 5 a.m., it's a little bit intrusive to the sleep, but at the end of the day, no one is really too bent. No one's bent about having to give a test in the morning, because they're protecting their sport. You know, they're protecting the sport and their opportunity to have a clean sport. So, and it's also gotten better in the last year, even say at the finish of the races, where it used to be pretty confusing, where you would have to check a board and does the athlete have control? Where was it posted? Oh, I can't find where it's posted. Who checked? Did you check? I didn't check. Who checked? You know? And so now they have a really good protocol where if you're going to get tested at the race, there's a chaperone. The chaperone will be there when you cross the line. Okay. And that's how you know. If the chaperone's not there, then you don't get tested that day. So that has made it super easy for us that just started last year. Okay. And it was much better for everybody. So it wasn't confusing anymore. Yeah. You didn't have to stress, like the first thing that some riders ask is, did I make sure that I don't have control? And now it's like, we know now because they're there right when you cross the line. So, well,
that's surprising that it's not just like a text message or something that's just like, hey, you got flagged, come over here.
Yeah, no, it's not intrusive really. And it's part of being a professional, whether you're a professional mountain biker or you're a professional tennis player or, football. There's testing in sport, all sports, and to make sure that it's fair, so it's a good thing. And we just kind of have to manage it and acknowledge that. So,
yeah. Well, yeah. So thinking about other sports, to me, it seems a little crazy. I mean, really awesome too. Don't get me wrong, that in mountain biking, we have World Cups every year and there's races spread across multiple continents. Whereas if you look at like the Olympics or even soccer, they're only doing these big international competitions every 4 years. So do you think the mountain bike competition model is sustainable? I mean, it seems like a really big ask and, it makes it really tough for athletes to get involved because I imagine there's a big expense in all that travel. So do you have any thoughts on that? Like how the system is set up and maybe how it could be improved?
It's a really good point observation. Right now we're actually going through some big changes with professional mountain biking with a new broadcaster. And so at this point, there's a lot of wait and see of what happens and if things are going to be an improvement or if we've lost something. Yeah. So at the moment, if I'm looking back at how it was in the past and without seeing without having experienced working with the new organizers yet, if we are operating on the same model that we have now, where we have eight or nine World Cups a year and a couple that are out of Europe, I think that's excellent. That's sustainable. What isn't sustainable is if we start having to travel all over the world, but we're not bringing in partners outside of cycling, So right now, most teams are funded by a bike brand or a clothing company or something. It's all in the industry. And we're definitely on a good trajectory to attract non-endemic partners into the sport. And you see that happening more and more. But yeah, if we have a good steady growth and we maybe add an event one year and then maybe we'll go to Asia some year, but if we go from 9 events to 15 events in a year, I think that'll be super hard for the sport. And for most teams won't be able to do that, especially if you're starting to travel outside of Europe, because the core of the sport is still in Europe.
Yeah.
So right now the format of eight or nine events is sustainable. And I think it's enough racing that you keep the fans engaged. It's not too much racing where you burn out the riders and the staff. That's the other thing that you have to take into account, that we're already traveling 150 days a year. And if we start adding more races, then you need to add more staff so that you can, because I like to stay home sometimes,
Right.
I like to ride my bike too. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it seems, I remember like when the Enduro World Series was coming up. I mean, it's very ambitious, right? To say like, this is a World Series, this is a World Cup. And then to actually back that up by going to Australia, going to Europe, going to North America. Sometimes you go to South America, sometimes you go to Africa. And yeah, do you think it works for cycling though, like at the scale it has been at, because cycling is a world event, like people can connect with the sport kind of wherever they are?
Yeah, that is unique of cycling, that it does, people can relate to cycling. And for sure, there's different hotbeds around the world that are more passionate about it. But yeah, you can bring a mountain bike race to Asia, and it's going to be successful because there's a lot of people that love to ride bikes there.
Yeah,
I would actually like to see that in the near future. We haven't had a World Cup in Asia, and it'd be great to have a cross country World Cup in Asia.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's a big trip, but I think it would help grow the sport.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so for core mountain bikers, and I imagine some of our listeners who love riding, some of them, not everybody follows pro racing. So what would you tell people, like why they should pay attention to pro racing, even if they're not competitors themselves, or, they just ride for fun?
Well, that's a good question. I think I would say it's about the people. If you enjoy watching, or if you enjoy competition at some level, or you can appreciate, even if you're not a competitor, but you can appreciate what athletes do, how they work really hard to get there, and then you see what they're achieving. It's impressive to watch the riders at the top end of the sport, and just their skills, on the bike are incredible. What they're doing now versus 10 years ago in a cross country race just blows my mind. It's like what downhill was 10 years ago.
Right.
And now we're in cross country. So yeah, it's exciting. The format's exciting. It's not too long. So I think it's easier to watch a cross country mountain bike race or a short track. A short track's 20 minutes, and those are super intense. And the other side of that is also the technology. There's a lot of things that people that maybe they're not into racing, but they're into bikes and they're into tech. And there's things that are happening with wheels and tires and drivetrains that ultimately ends up on the bike in the garage. But it's cool to see those trends and see where they're starting. And you often see that for the first time at a bike race, at a World Cup.
Yeah.
That's where it all starts, because someone's looking for a small advantage that they might get out of the product, or a big advantage that they might get out of the product. And so, yeah, if you're into the tech and it's another reason to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting, because it's like, I mean, there are sports like that, like NASCAR or Formula One, where, the tech is a part of it, but yeah, bike racing seems to really blend the two. I mean, you have to be extremely athletic and fit in bike racing. And so, yeah, there's like both aspects to it. And I also love your point about how racing has changed. It continues to change and evolve. And, if you tried watching a race 10 years ago and you're like, it's kind of boring, it's not for me, it's way different now. Like they're constantly, things are being changed to make it more exciting, make it more interesting. And yeah, it's really cool to see that evolution.
Yeah. And the coverage has improved with drones and, onboard cameras and things like that it makes it more exciting. So, you see a lot more.
Yeah. And you can watch it. This isn't like something where you have to make sure it's on your TV. I mean, these things now, we have the internet, so we can watch the races and recaps and all that stuff. So much more accessible.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, Matt, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us and kind of give us a inside view of what it's like to be a part of a factory racing team.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, you can get more information about the Trek Factory Racing Team at racing.trekbikes.com. That's all we've got this week. We'll talk to you again next week.